something I really need to talk about. Now, let me just show you the marks, first of all. This. And how about this? That's a dressing for an operation that's called an angiogram, which is they cut open your artery in your arm and they send a camera up into your heart to find out what's really going on. So, last video I made, that was not me just trying to be able to continue to speak, to try to exercise. Couldn't think and speak at the same time, but I could speak just about. So I made a few videos where I was just playing a few games, and it's like, I've got to stay in the game here, because if I lose my ability to speak, I might as well be dead. And my health problems become a catastrophe. So, made that video where at the end I was very cynical and very sort of abrupt about having got a visit to an NHS hospital when I'd had an episode of what could only be discovered as a severe shortage of breath, a very, very frightening experience, the likes of which I'd never experienced before. Went to an NHS hospital, and on the way to the hospital said, I know what's going to happen here. These people are going to see that I'm sweating, because I'm always sweating, and they're going to see that they're going to detect that my blood pressure is high, and they're going to instantly diagnose me with heart failure. And they're going to go down a course of action of running every test in the world, and they're not going to get to the bottom of the high blood pressure, and they're not going to find anything wrong with me, and we'll be back to square one with whatever has caused this. And I was confident in saying that, and went, and my experience showed that. So what I actually did was thought, right, I have no need for the National Health Service here. They're not going to help me, because I know exactly what they'll do. And so I solicited some advice and did some research, as all good Googlers do. So I took measures. One thing is this stuff that I take so much joy out of drinking, this coffee, I've transferred over to decaf. And you know something, I'm so fucking naturally wired that I can't even tell the difference. I don't know why the fuck I've ever bothered drinking caffeine, because it just makes me more like myself. It adds more. It's like, they don't do shit, they don't touch the sides. Coffee doesn't do anything. It has no stimulating effect, but I can see in the end that it does have the ability to raise one's blood pressure and overstimulate one's system, making it difficult to sleep. Well, you can actually get a nice drop of decaf, and I don't give a shit. It's nice, good coffee, I don't give a fuck. I wonder why I didn't switch over to it years ago, for the benefits. So I stopped drinking coffee, thinking, right, I'll cut down on the stimulants and cut them right out, and then that'll stop this racing blood pressure. But then I also got to considering, you know, that flat that I've lived in for years that the council wouldn't do a fucking hand's turn about, that they used to be embarrassed about, that they used to pretend didn't exist, and have me on the internet showing this damp death trap and saying, I live here and I pay rent to live here. I've lived here for years, and this place has always been like this, but the council pretend that it doesn't exist. I've brought them round and given them a tour, and they've said nothing because it makes them look bad. So they've endlessly kicked the problem down the road. And then eventually, it got dealt with. Why did it get dealt with? Because I did something that I wouldn't normally do. I set lawyers on them, and they immediately sprang into action and refurbished the place. It took them a year. But the flat above me has had no tenant in it for about 18 months. The guy who was in there last went insane and abandoned the place. So I don't know what's been going on in that building. And I got a suspicion that it might have fallen into its old state of disrepair. And that might be accumulating to my breathing difficulty. So I ordered some humidity sensors. And it turns out that my flat's at 80% humidity and has been for as long as I can tell. And it'd be a matter of there's a time here as to where these big health problems have appeared, and they kind of correlate. So I got a dehumidifier, fired it up, good one, fired it up, got it down to 50, and it's like, shit, this is like a different place. So I'm like, hey, maybe this is going to help. And then I also took some actual advice about drugs to take that weren't specific, that might have actually done more harm than good. Now I've got to speak to a real expert about it, where I from time to time exchange words with Sam Vaknin. I like Vaknin. He never mentions me, and I don't mention him in any videos, but I like Sam. I think he's misjudged by many, but I have my own way of dealing with people who could be said to be difficult. I'm difficult too. I'm more difficult than they are, so I'm able to compete on a psychological level with someone like Sam. I like Sam. And he's had similar problems himself, and he recommended to me to go on magnesium and to go on something called COQ10, which is a supplement which is apparently good for your lungs. That may have actually flushed out something that accentuated the problem, but I'd have been better off strangely, I'd have actually been better off under the care of the doctors than trying to go down that route. And it's a weird thing. I don't. The advice I got from Sam was absolutely sound. Do you know why? I got better. Weird. I got better, but then it turned out that it was wrong. I got better because on Christmas Day, I had, let's say, a longer day than usual. And around 10 o'clock at night, just watching something, it happened again. Christmas Day. Another attack. And I'm like, hang on a minute. All the things I do, and I cut down smoking to 4 a day, from what would have been 14 down to 4, and every time I smoke one of these bad boys now, I count it and like, if I can just do 2 today. I've been in hospital, I've still been sneaking out for a smoke. I did a deal with them. So if you're going to fuck me about, I'm going to go out for a smoke anytime I like. How's that for a deal? Otherwise I'm just walking out of this place. They're like, you can't walk out of this place, you might die. So Christmas night, I had another one of these attacks. Having taken measures to think, right, I'm going to try and make this better, I'm going to try and fix this. I had another one, it happened again. And this time, I was more prepared for it. So I knew it'd pass. So I wasn't as afraid. And I just toughed it through, and I'm like, this isn't good for me, this could kill me, this must be doing damage to my heart, this must be doing damage to my lungs. I can't breathe, yet there's air everywhere, and the air's now clean, and I still can't breathe. So from there, letter arrives from when I previously went to the hospital, and they're saying, we want you to come in for a cardiogram, sort of like an ultrasound on the heart, outpatient. I'm like, oh, I'm turning up for that. I want to know what their science says. So I rings them, confirms that I'm going to come for my outpatient's appointment. And then it wouldn't have been, it was actually exactly 2 weeks after Christmas Day, exactly 2 weeks later. I went to bed early on Monday night. Went to bed early at about 10 because I had to be up reasonably early. And I woke up at 1 a.m. having another they can't describe them as heart attacks anymore, but what was then being described by the doctors as a heart attack. Woke up in the middle of the night, and I'm sat there and I'm like, I can feel this coming, but there's nothing I can do to stop it. So I'm like, right, stay calm, keep breathing, and I'm breathing. I'm like, no, this is going to start up any time now. Starts. telephone 999. I can't wait. Wait about what seemed, it probably wasn't so long, but it was likely 20 minutes. It was a hell of a long time waiting for paramedics. And I took the trouble of actually leaving my back door open when I rang them. I struggled, get to the door, leave the back door wide open, and they still wouldn't come in. They were like banging and going, hello, and I'm like, oh, and they're like, hello, oh. So they get in and they just immediately put me on oxygen, and they say, hey, you've bought one of those bottles of oxygen you can buy off Amazon. I'm like, yeah. He says, they don't work. Nice try though. Says that is what you need, but that thing, you know, them aerosolized ones you can buy, they don't work. They don't produce anything like enough flow, nothing like enough flow ever to be of any use whatsoever. They're not valuable for anything at all where it comes to someone needing oxygen. So they immediately put me on oxygen, and then they give me one of those pills that they give people who are having a heart attack, that they put under, you put this pill under your tongue, breaks it instantly. So then it's like, can breathe again. They're like, well, you've got a serious fucking problem here. You're coming with us to the hospital. We'll take you back to Fairfield. I'm like, oh, those guys again. All right. I waited a hell of a long time in the accident and emergency department waiting to be seen. If you get brought in on an ambulance and they're flashing the blue lights and you turn up at resuscitation, right, you get seen a lot quicker. Tip from the top. If you're having what they think is a heart attack, they'll see you straight away. Funny old place. First person I ran into was a girl who used to live around the corner from me, and I know her name because she used to live around the corner from me, but she can't remember mine, so she's a bit funny. So I've ran into her in hospitals a couple of times, maybe 4 times in the last 30 years, and she can't remember my name, but I remember hers, and she's sheepish, and I was too knackered to have a conversation with her. But she's moved to the top of the game in nursing as to where she's a crash prevention nurse now. She's this guy's dying, we've got him on the table, we need to resuscitate him type nurse. So it's like, good to see Karen's done so well for herself. Ha! Always see people who went to school within that NHS organisation at one time or another. But gets into there and they are able to stabilise my position pretty soon. But they're like, right, you need to go on heart monitors, you need an ECG, you need to be on heart monitors now. They had me on heart telemetry for 5 days. Wires all over me, and in the end they give me a wireless sender so I could move around a little bit with all these things on me. And then they've immediately put me on. I told them about the reason why in the past my life has been utterly destroyed by the NHS was because of really because of a beta blocker drug they put on in a previous attempt to manage my blood pressure. Back before they had our fancy operations like angiograms, yeah, where they can send a camera into your heart and have a look. Back in the old days of suck it and see, the NHS had decided that I had just years to live and was likely not a good candidate for open heart surgery because I didn't deserve it because I used to drink and smoke. Not someone who'd be worthy of a transplant either. Someone who was going to fade away and die in my mid-30s based on what they thought they knew from my blood pressure. So it's like I've seen all this before. So I'm able to speak to the lucky for me, the first point of real contact I had was pharmacist. And it's like, yeah, there's a beta blocker drug I had a terrible bad reaction to, and explained the situation to them, and they actually pulled me old medical records and they found it. Why? Because the last time I was in that hospital, they ordered my medical records, and by the time I returned in a real distress situation, they'd received them. And it's like, right, okay, yeah, we know what you're on about. And then they're like, yeah, we don't have to give you that. We know about it. We know that's a bad drug. We know we were giving out that bad drug for years. We know that this had massive side effects. We were giving it to people with bad hearts, and it was giving them psychological difficulties. It was making them fucking slur. It was making it so they couldn't get their words out. It was making it so they became submissive. They knew about it. They said, we don't give that people so much anymore. We'll put you on something different. And then they whack me on statins, which I think is a fucking absurdity as the story develops. So I've then been like ferried around the place, but not like someone in casualty. They found me a bay in a private room in casualty. And then they've put me on a ward. And then there's me, and there's 80 and 90-year-old guys and people in extreme medical difficulty all around me for the next few days. I've seen things the likes of which you wouldn't believe happened to people this week. Shared a ward with someone so profoundly ill, it's unbelievable to me that he was alive. And able to drain 18 litres of fluid off his enlarged liver. Tell you what a funny place a hospital is these days, where I can sit there and watch someone having their liver drained in the bed across from me, and it'd be like a TV show. Right, you want to see some live action medical shit? I've seen some live action medical shit this week, boys and girls. I shit you not. So, next move. X-ray. Okay, you're done. Next move. CAT scan. Breathe in. Hold. Breathe out. Repeated 5-6 times. Okay, complete. Off you go. Then it's like echocardiogram. Guy who does the echo thing, you know, like the thing, the ultrasound looking at the kids, he looks at my heart with that. He reports that one of my ventricles isn't working properly. He estimates I've got 25% heart function, right? Okay, so you now have to go for this this one I've had, where I've had the camera up. You got to go for that one, right? So they're sending me down there, and it's like, so what's going to happen here? It's like, well, we're going to send a camera into your heart, but attached to this camera is some things called stents, and they can drive the camera into a collapsed artery, and in essence, they can deploy a expandable support structure, like put a piece of scaffolding in it to open it up. It's like, this will, if you've got, as they say, congestive heart failure, this will save your life. Stents. Well, there's 3 arteries that go into your heart, so the most stents you can have is 3 stents, and by then your heart is fucked because they've got no easy treatment left. Right? So they sent me for this. Uncomfortable sort of minor intrusive operation, not so bad, but your arm is real sore after, and this arm is fucked for about a week, and I can't drive or anything, because if that breaks open I'll just bleed out. Yeah, it's important that I don't strain this, so I'm kind of one-handed, can't take the dogs for a walk with this hand. So I goes and has this test done, right? And gets to talking to Dr. Khan, who's the surgeon. And I like Dr. Khan, he's my kind of guy. It's like Armando Iannucci, you know, the guy who works with Steve Coogan, that guy. Like him, funny, sharp, but serious. Absolutely deadly serious, but interesting, sharp, funny. And he was telling a story of someone else who'd made the same error as the girl he was training, who was an Indian doctor. Don't know about her competence, but she was absolutely beautiful. It's like if you're going to bring people over from another country like that, make them be medical students and make them so they're like, wow, you're beautiful. Why not? But he was explaining to her the story of the first time he made that mistake she just made. He was teaching her. Really good teacher. And he says, oh, I just thought I'd share you the story, you know, so you'd understand. English wasn't her first language, but she got it. And I says to her, he says to me, are you all right with this, John? We're having this conversation. I says, yeah, of course I am. I like stories. And he says, yeah, so do I. He's my kind of guy. So this fella goes on the most infinite qualified guy who's ever laid a hand on me as a surgeon. This guy's real good. He does his angiogram, and there's nothing wrong with my heart. Goes in there and says, look, he says, your heart's bigger than it should be because it's working so hard to deal with your high blood pressure, to deal with that thick blood. But one of your arteries is slightly narrower than the other two, and the other two are fine. There's nothing wrong with your heart. The guy who'd done the previous test with the cardiogram had seen what he'd wanted to see. When they actually got in there and had a look inside it, it's like, this guy doesn't need stents. His heart is too big because it's worked so hard. He's had to become a bigger muscle than it was previously because his blood's so thick. And then it'd be a matter of... So, not dying of heart failure. No, never was. Where's the high blood pressure originate from? We don't know. So, what I've been is diagnosed with, I have to now take something like 8 tablets a day, right? Give you an idea of my blood pressure, right? Over the last week, it usually clocks in at, are you ready for it? 220 over 110. Incredible. High. Incredible. And they don't know what causes it, and I've got no heart defect. That would suggest that it's down to a cognitive heart failure. It's not. It's just high. The breathing difficulty, I'm getting better, right? And it's like a strong likelihood the steroids they put me on to drive out any possible. One doctor, 6 doctors have had a go at me. 6. And they've all added things to a cocktail. And the Eastern European trans doctor, right, who knew how to use Google, put me on steroids to and water tablets. It's like, well, if he has got water in his heart or lungs, if we put him on water tablets, his body will absorb it to get rid of it. So I'm no longer on any steroids, but I've been given steroids all week. Water tablets. So I've been pissing like a racehorse. So it's like inadvertently they did a move there that's alleviated most of my breathing difficulty, or even the shadow that it might reappear. So they may have, going through the list actually done me some real good. The super high blood pressure though, they've got no answer for it in the same way they had no answer for it back then. But now they can't throw at me, you're going to die, you need a multiple fucking heart bypass, you need a triple heart bypass. No, I don't need a triple heart bypass. I don't need any work done to my heart at all. But they're saying we have to manage this blood pressure, which is what they've always said. And they want me on 10 different tablets. Statins. Like, what the fuck you want them in your body for? So, today I was due to be discharged because the last specialist I spoke to, another Indian guy, he was smart too, but he was one of these, you people don't listen type, because I'm a smart ass, right? So he tried to tell me in straight up language, gave me the smoking speech, right? I had checked all my files, and his attitude was like, oh, fucking hell. And he just gave me the smoking speech and said, right, this is just going to drive us mad. No more heart monitoring on this guy. Take no more telemetry. You need to give up smoking, sir. And that's it. That's all he had for me. And he wrote in the notes that I should be discharged first thing in the morning once my wrists have a chance to heal. Gone. Right? So I was supposed to get discharged this morning at 8 o'clock because they need the bed. But they have a review board, an oversight consultant who rubber stamps all of the discharges, people being freed. And she looked at my file, right, and didn't let me out. So I had a word with my staff nurse. Says I'm supposed to be leaving first thing in the morning, and she didn't know. She had my word for that because I'd spoken to the consultant who'd released me, right? She didn't know that for sure, but I told her, so she had no reason to think I was lying. And then she inquires with the oversight doctors why I've not been discharged, and they say, why should he think he's been discharged? Says, well, he's been told that he was being discharged yesterday by his consultant, and now you're saying he's not. No, he won't have been told that. I've looked at his file and it's grave. What? Right? So in the end, I've mithered all day, and I've been at him. I've been like, look, I'm not trying to make trouble here, but you know what I mean? It seems like a bit of a piss take here, because I've been ready to go all day, and I've had breakfast, dinner and tea. Or when you're on the ward, they feed you. It's all right. You'll never get fat, and you get a little taste of everything, but they make sure you know you've had something to eat. It wasn't bad at all. I was like, hospital food? Yeah, it's all right. They got the message. But I'm there all day, and it's like, you should have gone by now. And the nurse, who I didn't know, I only met her today because they rotate them. They have 3 days on, 3 days off, etc. She was a new one to me, but she was a good one as well. There's so many of them who were gems, brilliant. You know, like these people, because these nurses, because they get actually asked to do so much of the actual work, they are as good as fucking doctors in most. They just haven't got the rubber stamp. They just can't write prescriptions. But all of the work ends up being done by the staff nurses. It's outrageous. Never saw a doctor do anything other than instruct a staff nurse to do all the work. Weird. As to where staff nurses are the backbone of the National Health Service. The backbone. And it's like there's differences, massive differences in competence amongst them. Massive differences. I'm not being unfair here. I'm like, some of them are 25-year veterans and some of them are 5-year veterans. And some of the 5-year veterans are excellent. And some of the 25-year veterans are fucking lazy people who don't like working. Really massive. You get it where you've got them where many of them who are in that job have been traumatised by and are in a sort of career that's everything and past the point of no return, and at the same time like broken fucking gems, massive talents, unbelievable. Some of those people you get to meet in a hospital for their rugged dedication and ability to carry on in the face of what is like, what the fuck just happened, every 5 minutes. Like, wow. Just in awe of a few of those I've met this week. In awe of these people, how competent they were. Others, not so much. Would be... Having spent a week in hospital, right, in acute care, like serious shit, I didn't see anything that was incompetent other than fucking doctors thinking they knew things and telling people to do things that weren't correct. And me being a sort of all-round understanding, sort of smarty pants who understands. I have an intrinsic understanding of any system that works in equilibrium with itself. So I have a holistic understanding of the world that takes account of medicine. I know something, but I know there's massive gaps in my knowledge. But if I can make the association of the systems, I can understand it quickly. So it's like, I've learned a thing or two this week, like a real lot. It's like shit, you know, you could like chemically keep someone fucking alive who's in whatever shape. Wow, you could keep someone alive who was on the verge of some kind of death from some kind of organ failure forever, indefinitely, until the power ran out. It's like just how sick and ill are some people in this modern world. Just how close to death are they without the machines. Stunning. Stunning things they do to people to keep them in the game. But I'm having this thing where I've got to a situation where they're not letting me out of this hospital. So when I make enough noise, so the actual consulting doctor who's standing in the way of me being discharged came to see me. And then, oh, okay, she says, oh, I've read the file. And she had stopped reading the file at the echocardiogram, having made her mind up, and didn't even read about the results of this procedure or its findings. Right? And you know why? When I told her, I says, look, I've had the, cardio... the camera in, and I've been discharged, and they didn't do anything. And she's like, how is that possible? I said, do you think I sat here with crayons and felt tips and painted that on myself? Do you think that... And she sort of, the penny dropped for a minute. And I'm like, why haven't you read the report about this this operation? I said, well, I didn't think it was relevant. I read the previous report and it said you had like 25% heart function, one of your ventricles fucked. So she thought she'd read enough from the previous doctor's analysis of different information, and he'd seen what he'd wanted to see based on what the blood pressure were telling him would be what he'd see. And then when the real guy got in with the camera, there's nothing there. How does one account for that? Well, she didn't even continue reading the document to find out to get to the end. So I basically made the case infallibly that I'd had the operation and hadn't had any stents done. I'd kind of know, right? And she kind of accepts it. And I says, how do you count for this? She says, I didn't read the whole report. I'm saying, how does that work? What are you playing at? And I wasn't mean, but I was serious, because she'd come to have a serious conversation with me. So I had a really serious conversation with her. She goes away, finds the files, has to concur with the decision of the surgeon, signs the release to let me out with a massive apology for the mix-up, because she didn't understand how somebody with a blood pressure at 220 over 110 didn't have a fucking heart problem, or a serious heart problem. And it'd be, this might even sort itself out if you stop smoking. You might get better. The heart itself might get better, but the blood pressure will always be high. I've got no reason for it. They can use chemicals to lower it, and they've actually managed to find a combination of chemicals that they've had me on today, a handful of pills, that have reduced my blood pressure to 140 over 90. And they're like, we might fix this. And I'm like, your drugs have improved. Technology has caught up to what my GP found in 1999, right? Has caught up to it, and it's caught up to it to prove her fucking wrong. I'm a kind of freak of nature because of my blood type. Tell you what, I got on it tremendously well with the people in the hospital. They were, in many cases, intelligent, experienced, wonderful people with great senses of humour, and I like people like that. I love people like that. I gets into the cardio ward. They're looking at my file and they say, you're a type O negative, aren't you, John? And I says, oh yes I am, like one of God's favourite children. And these three women like, yeah, so are we. I'm like, really? She says, have you done any research on this? Do you know about this stuff? And I'm like, yeah, I've from experience and from deduction, and also from wide range of sources and experiences, I can tell you a lot about type O negatives, a great deal. And they're like, none of us got COVID. Like, what? Yes, none of us got COVID. We worked for the entire pandemic. None of us got COVID. None of us were even touched by it. And I'm like, okay, good one. What does medical science, what do the doctors here tell you that that's about? What reason can they give you for that? What conclusion can you draw from that? And it's, medical science has no answer for that and has got no interest in ever fucking finding out. But there's no end to the amount of good they can do and money they can make and product they can manufacture from the corpses of type O negative people. I'm fucking telling you. You can look that up and find it out with absolute certainty from as many sources as you fucking like. So I'm putting it to them. I blow these women's minds. They're all mothers with children who are O negs too. Some that are, some that aren't. And I put it to them, I'm like, you have to realise that this has been going on since the dawn of time, not from when medical science discovered rhesus negative people. It's been going on since the dawn of time. So as you singularly now, you understand with your own complications of having children, that there was once actually a survival imperative in the old world where the races didn't mix and they kept it in the family. Like, why? Because in the old world, to mix race would be to lose mother and child in childbirth. And they're just wallop. Of course that's the truth. Absolutely. How can that not be the way that it is? How can that not be the way that it's always been? They're like, wow, you've really thought about this. So they're like, you've blown our minds, and not in a bad way. Thank you very much. And it's like, and you work for the NHS and there's no doctor in the place that you can talk about this miracle drug. It's like, you pump this stuff into gunshot victims to help them fight infection, and you're full of it. And we're not to talk about the effect that it might have on your health, on your physiology, on your mind. So I'm telling these women, I'm saying, any of you ever been IQ tested? No. This is smart. Have you ever been IQ tested? No. I says, go and take an IQ test. You'll be 3 standard deviations over the average, so you'll have an IQ of 130, all of you. She's like, but I'm not that intelligent. I'm like, how quickly can you see something and identify it, and then see something and identify something else and make a connection? Well, I'm a nurse, so I just do it instantly without thinking. This is that, this is that. That's what an IQ is. That's what high IQ is. And it's like, if those kind of connections give you flashbacks that just have you instantly remember everything associated to it, you've got a photographic memory that's triggered by fanciful association, and you've likely been tortured into having it with the education system. And they're like, these women are like, yeah, that's me. Yeah, that's me. So I'm having the joke with these people as to like, I'm the champion of blood pressure. You should have my name at the top of the high score charts. Having just come out of their surgery, where they're looking at the same information as me, and they're saying, you're probably looking at a triple heart bypass, and then come out at the other end and they're like, you're a type O negative, aren't you? Having just witnessed a fucking miracle that I didn't have a serious heart defect and wasn't in heart failure. It's like, what a fucking freaky day experience that is when that comes to pass. Wonderful. So yeah, you know, you guys who just take a couple of readings and decide I'm fucking dying, right? I've always been wrong. And you haven't a fucking clue about me or my kind, or how I'm put together, or how I function, or how I see things, or how I pick up on things. You haven't got a fucking clue what I am. You don't know I exist. They brought in an old guy yesterday, right? Chris, I've got to go back tomorrow to get some more fucking meds, because that's another story as to where they really fucked up. Because they held me back so long, because that disbelieving consultant didn't read to the end of the file. There wasn't any meds for me. The pharmacists had gone home. So they're like, we can let you go, but can you come back tomorrow for your meds, because of all this fucking time wasted, we can't give you your meds anymore. But old guy, I have to go back tomorrow to get meds. So I promised to take him a newspaper. 82 years old, right? This guy's had a stroke not so long since, in the last 6 months, probably one previous to. 82 years old. And they brought him in, right? And he'd been brainwashed by the first person that saw him to believe he had a brain tumour, and he hasn't. He hasn't, because he comes along and he retells what the last doctor told him as what's wrong, And the last doctor had told him that he was talking in a very scattergun approach as to where he couldn't hold a line or narrative when he could. And was the word salad had been used to describe the way the guy was talking, when that's not what word salad is. Whoever had applied that word salad label didn't know what word salad was. This guy was being fobbed off, right? And he's in distress. And he was fucking worried. And in what was an unfortunate combination of events, and something like hadn't slept for 24 hours, having been sat in on a trolley in casualty for 24 hours, and had to have his granddaughter fight tooth and nail for him to be allowed on a ward. They got him on a ward and they put him in the bed next to me, and I'm like, this guy's confused. He's right. He's right, but it's like the added stress that's been put on this fella has accentuated every single thing that was wrong with him to start with. You've dehydrated him, you've starved him, he's diabetic and he's not eaten properly because you've had him on it. You can't look after the people that you've got. And it's like, this is no damnation of the NHS. It's like, this is a picture of how bad it is, where it's a matter of, you can talk to them all. I was lucky this time. I've waited the 14 and 15 hours before and didn't get a bed with a fucking, what they thought was a heart attack, right? And gone home because whatever they were doing to me was making me worse. My health was deteriorating in the hospital. I've been sat in the back of an ambulance for 2 hours with 2 paramedics who could be out saving someone's life because they've nowhere to physically put me in casualty. And we are not in a COVID pandemic right now. But this time, because I came in via resuscitation, I was kind of fast-tracked to the front, so my discomfort didn't start. I came in and was immediately put on fucking respirators, you know, like, not respirate, they never had to do that, but oxygen, nebulizers, looked after properly, ECGs, heart meters, bang, monitored day after day after day after day after day. Things stuck to me all day. It's like, what a week I've had. Fucking amazing. So this old boy, right? They convinced him of a narrative, right, that would make it so the next person who spoke to him might see the signs of something like a brain tumour. And he ain't got a brain tumour. It's like there's something going on, but it's not profound like that. Like, why? Well, there was an incident as to where he got confused, where they put him on a drip because he's a diabetic, he's got other problems, so they put him on a drip to rehydrate him. They had to rapidly rehydrate him. So they put him on a drip, and it was one of these drips with a charger on it so you could walk around with it. So he decides to go to the toilet and take it with him into the shower, and they are like, what the fuck's going on? And he's someone who struggles to have a shit. So he has his own particularly gruesome method of having a crap, right? And the nurses have sort of walked in on it, and the nurses like freaked out. And it's like, how the fuck has he ended up in the shower? Because that's how he's gone out of crap, right? You know, shit in the shower. Because sitting down, he's really got no real control over his rectum anymore. That's something I've spoke to people about. Old guys, they've no control over their arse anymore. They're incontinent in that way. So when they need to go to the toilet, they need to go to the toilet real suddenly, right? just here, right? And he was on that drip and he had to go to the toilet real suddenly, so he took that drip with him and ended up in the shower with it. I mean, using the shower in order to have a crap and just wash it away as you do it. Passable, isn't it? If that's what you need to do, that's not beyond the pale. But the nurse on duty ran in, walked in on this, and couldn't process what was going on, and immediately hit the fucking button as to say that old Chris was like an unmanageable, disturbed guy who was likely suffering from a brain tumour, or was like had a burst, had a brain hemorrhage, because he didn't have the fucking 2 or 3 hours it took to calm him down, to treat him like a fucking man, an adult, like with some respect, and listen to his stories. And you know something, he's pretty good at telling stories. To say that he had a scattergun approach to storytelling, couldn't hold a narrative. He can remember anything that he wanted to come up. He could remember names of exotic drugs that he'd been diagnosed, names of doctors and surgeons and people, and follows the football. And it's like, get this guy talking and don't treat him like he's like an invalid. And suddenly he'll tell you the story of what's wrong. It's like by chance, right? Because I was listening into the worthless doctor they sent in to go and talk to him. This guy managed to get some proper sense out of this old boy, because I'd sat there with him and calmed him down and be like, "You're all right, I'll look out for you, mate." Like, yeah, because someone had to fight tooth and nail for him not to just treat him like a piece of meat, and had gone to the fucking, gone to town on the hospital to say, put this guy in a bed. And I'd been and done whatever I was doing, came back to my bed, and I had this very afraid old man facing me in the next bed with his granddaughter, who was like a woman with kids who had to get home. She had other things to do. For a minute I'm thinking, has she just dumped this crazy old man here? And it wasn't that. It wasn't that. She looked out for him. It's like this guy was someone who had a family who were willing to fight for him, and he was someone worth fighting for. And it's a matter of, if he didn't have her, right, he'd be packed off in some fucking home, doped up, done with, forgotten about, expire. If he didn't have her fighting for him, someone would have made an arbitrary decision to say, this guy's mind's gone. I'm going to take him a newspaper in tomorrow. Writer's ring, calmed him, got him talking. No one in that organisation with any kind, no experience of seniors. I've had old relatives. I mean, I have a thing where I have a way of talking to old people because my mother is deaf. She's got about 20% hearing, but I've adapted over the years to be someone who she can understand. I speak clearly enough so I cut through. She can always hear what I have to say. And I've developed a way of talking because I've had to, because it's been a necessity of living my life. And then it's made me effective at communicating with my grandmother when she was deaf as a post. She can always hear what I'm saying. So it's like I can talk to these people. I can talk to seniors. I've known so many of them. Spent so much of my time in working men's clubs and pubs with old guys, made friends with old guys, listened to the stories. So I goes in hospital again and does what I've been doing my whole life, talking to the old guys, listening to the stories. It's like, without people to fight for him, that guy had just found himself, I don't know, some home for a hospice, home for the people who were just finished, to just be made comfortable in there, some hospice or something. It's like, no, this guy's got a wife, he can actually, who's a bit younger than him, who's a lot fitter than him. It's like, he can go home. It's like he's had an episode that appeared, maybe seemed like he's had a bit of a stroke. And maybe he has got something in his head. And it's a matter of, if they can identify that someone's got a brain tumour, they can control it with drugs. They can shrink it with drugs these days. It's like, go down the right path and this guy will be okay. And the psychologist who came in to talk to him, he's not a psychologist, he was a psychiatrist. So he's looking for brain damage in things like lack of balance and coordination, where this guy's already explained that he lost his sense of balance in a previous stroke. So this guy's looking for things that this guy's already had impaired, that he's not really had time to relearn. And say, oh well, this shows that there's damage, these brains destroyed. Like, only one thing he got right, and he was this weird looking Scottish psychiatrist of about 24 or 25 who had the worst fucking haircut I've ever seen and the worst tash I've ever seen with such a haircut. He looked like a Scottish version of like fucking Yozza Hughes. It might be an hard character to place, but he was a weird looking Scottish fucker. He only stumbled on the one decent piece of one accidentally got to work on his problem, as to say, we're going to put you on steroids just in case anything that's growing in your brain is going to start to shrink. We'll see if we can shrink it. It's like they started him down that approach, and he significantly improved in 12 hours. 12 hours? So like, this guy had his wife and son visit him a day. 82-year-old fella, and he's right, he's coherent, they can understand him, he's feeling better. He's got his own problems, he's already got his own set of difficulties, but dying of some kind of brain disaster, no. It's like, yeah, he might have something in his head, but it's not the end for him. It's not impairing him the way that the doctors have chosen to see him, because they've ended up cleaning a lot of his shit. Like, and being like, what are you doing? Because it's like, I took care of that guy because none of the staff wanted to get near him, because they were like, this guy's fucking crackers, we can't stand him. So, to do the nurses a favour, me being in the next bed, sat there and talked to him, calmed him down, showed him the ropes. Showed him the ropes of what it's like to be on Crazy Ward 7. I have had a fucking almost life-changing week. I've had my eyes opened. I know some shit. So much so that I can apply it. And I've seen some things. Tell you something, right? National Health Service, right? It's a talent pool that's highly valuable, and it's not underappreciated, although they'll always say that they could be getting paid more, but just about anyone could say that. But I tell you what it is, it's demoralised. And gets demoralised, and it sort of holds itself together with what would be seen as a dark sense of humour and resilience, and probably an unhealthy attitude of maybe inappropriate support for one's colleague, as to where when mistakes get made, the cup would swallow it and have to survive. It's like mostly women, mostly really competent women, right? But again, a complex of women. So when they feel deeply stressed, suddenly they're giving you the man thing. I got the man, someone threw the man thing at me. This is one of Ward's sister, where we had a very difficult patient on our ward, and say this guy was, I've never ever seen anyone so critically ill and alive at the same time. And this guy was as damaged in as many ways as you could be damaged as I could see. He was like, this guy, he'd come in with sepsis, and he had an over-enlarged liver that made the guy's torso make him look like a fucking space hopper. Unbelievably sick guy. And it's like, saw him. He got moved out, and he's gone to Oldham. And I was asleep when I slept right through him being transferred out to an Oldham hospital at like 2 a.m. And he was like, John, see you, mate, see you. I'm going Oldham, but I was fast asleep. And he'd already gone by time, so woke me up, say, hey, he's going, they're taking him at 2 o'clock in the morning. He needed another profound set of treatments at a different hospital to stay alive. But he spent something like an hour looking for some pills that he'd misplaced last night. Or the night before last, when he was last there. And he says, I gotta find these pills. Are they in this? Are they in it? And we basically searched through his bed, all his covers, because he's always disorderly because he's struggle moving guy. This guy got sepsis in both his legs, and he'd already been part of some misadventure where he had to have one of his legs shortened in order to put it back together. It had been so badly crushed. So he was somebody who on one foot had a built-up shoe. And he found his pills. And he says, you having trouble sleeping at all, don't you, John? I'm like, you this place? It's like you're lucky if you get 3 hours sleep a night, and you'll not get 3 hours sleep unbroken. But you'll be lucky to get 3 hours sleep a night in this place. And he says, well, I'll sort it out for you, have one of these. What are they? Morphine. And I'm like, morphine? I'm like, 20 years ago I'd have said, yeah, go on. I've never tried that. Seriously, I would have done. I'd be like, yeah, go on. Now I'm like, got a bit too much respect for the old internal organs to be putting that in me without needing to. And also that stuff can kind of give you breathing difficulties. It's like you give someone enough morphine and you'll kill them. And how will they die? Shortness of breath. Don't need to be taking morphine. It's like he had been all the time you're in there. We didn't tell them that he brought that with him. That was a drug that some other doctor out in the world had prescribed him. Some other doctor out in the world had given him access to like the strongest and most effective pain reliever and blast away high available. Some doctor out there had already given him these things. He'd already picked these things up on prescription. They weren't things illegal. They were things that he wasn't supposed to have brought into hospital with him. But because they're like, oh no, they're listed as an illegal. You've got to be special to be given them. And they wouldn't let him bring them back into the hospital. So he had his friends smuggle them back into him. And he's there and he's like, and being sick. It's like, oh, that was the morphine, was it? That was the morphine you were taking. You'd rather have that on the morphine than whatever else you're going through with all these other things they're doing to you. He was a dick, but I'll tell you something. I found him to be, just a genuine, real fucking surviving person. And he's suffering be no less or worse than, worth more or less than anyone else's. He was someone who's made mistakes in life, but the mistakes he's made were so fucking profound they damaged his body permanently. where the repercussions of his actions, he's paid the maximum price on many an occasion. It's like too much for the nurses to be able to actually handle, so they avoid. And why wouldn't they? Difficult, really difficult. But to me, what's he going to do with me? Treat the guy with respect as knowing something, as not being a fool, as not being crazy, as not being stupid, and suddenly you understand that there's games being played here. Strategies, survival strategies. So I ain't got anything bad to say about that guy. I didn't mind him. Was what he was. Is what he is. As I say, the state you're in to have fucking stayed in the game as unhealthy and as what appears to be close to death as you are, you ain't giving up being a cunt. You ain't giving up trying to fight for yourself. You're still in the game. Maybe. Still in the game. Why? Because my mother's still alive. I buried my father. I buried my sisters. We've buried her kids. And I'm not having my mother bury me. So I'll do whatever it takes to stay alive. Never seen anyone as profoundly ill as him. Ever. How is he still alive? The miracles of modern medicine. Like, how the fuck is he still alive? With sepsis in both his legs. Fucking looking like a space opera. And having witnessed a botched procedure to try to drain his fluids. Incredible. One doctor tells nurse what to do, because doctors don't actually do any doctoring, they just go around telling nurses what to do. It's not working properly. Why? Doctor didn't know what it was on about. Another doctor comes along and says, you don't do it like that. Who told you to do it like that? Or doctor number one did. Doctor number one's a fucking idiot, because that's not how you do it. He's just bullshitting you. You've wasted 2-3 hours of your time because he thinks he knows fucking everything. And can sound convincing. It's like, if you taught me all the right words to say something medical, I've just got it in my nature to deliver it with authority as if I really know what I'm talking about. If I understand it. That could be way wide of the mark. But deliver it with confidence. Not way wide of the mark, enough to sell it as a fucking error. Enough to convince someone I was right. To be convincing as opposed to being right. Which is why I'm not a fucking doctor. But I witnessed that whole exchange where she was told the wrong way of doing it. And then it all goes wrong and people are wondering why it's not working when doctor said that's how to do it, when doctor was wrong. And another doctor came along and went, no, that's not how you do it. Says the second doctor who came along, who was again real, sharp, smart, focused, serious, but could have a laugh. It's a funny old thing that, learn that back in the sales game. If you don't know a fucking clue what you're talking about, shut the fuck up and find out. Or find someone who knows. Make sure you've no excuses for running your mouth when you do not know, right? If I were their boss, he'd be in the shit, that doctor, today. If I knew about that. With having words about him as to say, what fucking planet do you come from where you just make shit up? You're getting fucked, right? He won't be having anything said. That'll be covered up and we'll all just say, forget it. Right? But the nurse who arrived a minute late because he said he needed to go to the toilet on the way in, don't know if that were true or false, but that's what he has to say. There's no reason, right, not to believe him. He was a minute late. and nothing was affected by it because he wanted a piss, because he'd just driven to work. He got a verbal warning. In writing, of course. They give you a verbal warning in writing. Someone from the HR department was sharp enough to pick up on that. And you know what? You know what the funny thing is about him? I can name, he's got Ellis. Good name. I'm like, wow, you got a cowboy name. It's like, I've never heard anyone ever make that. So yeah, it's a cowboy movie name, Ellis. No one's really called Ellis, so it's a cowboy movie name. Ray of Sunshine, lovely lad. One of these fellas who a good level of tolerance and would do his best for you, and it would break his heart to let you down. One of them, a good lad. Now, with people like, I know good lads. I've been a good lad, right? I'm not such a good lad now, wiser than that. Right? He's one of them people who's a good lad, so you have to protect him. You actually have to protect him. He's worth protecting. Because he's not had the ray of sunshine inside him snuffed out just yet. So if it's something you can do, if there's something you can do for him, it's to make sure that don't happen to him. You protect him. If he needs to be punished for something, punish him. But you don't give him a written warning or a verbal warning in writing for being 1 minute late for work. Because what you've done there is you've said, fuck you and your ray of sunshine. People who are rays of sunshine, when the sunshine gets stolen, which is a great song, they don't tend to be so productive. And what they usually do as a labour of love quickly turns that day into a chore, and is about 50% as effective. And I ended up spending 13-hour days with these people on the ward, and I was the only one sane enough to be worthy talking to. So, who could carry a conversation, or he wasn't in a coma. And he says to me, Alice, late in the day where I'm at it, talking about that old guy, that old boy, because Alice was the guy who ended up having to put up with the insanity of the taking a shit in the shower. And I says, mate, I says, like, this is monkey tennis. What? I said, yeah, monkey tennis. Remember what that thing that Alan Partridge said? Idea for a game show. It's a joke with a very, very interesting origin as to it's a visual gag that's a spoken joke that was come up with by Peter Bainham, and the story behind it is you can imagine monkey tennis with the PG tips chimps all dressed up in tennis gear with tennis rackets. You can imagine it, but in reality it would be a little bit unseemly, chaotic and ridiculous. Monkey tennis. You can imagine it just for a moment that it might work. That old fella, I says, no mate, I says, that guy, that old guy, it's like, he's not talking. I says, look, I put it to him, I'm like, I'll talk to this old guy for you, because that was the job he was left with what the fuck is going on with this old guy. And I says to him, this is monkey tennis, mate. Says, this guy's not suffering from a scattergun approach to storytelling, or else like switching narratives and babble, word salad, as they say. That's not what's going on. It's like, this is more like monkey tennis. And he says to me, John, thank you for being the sane one. I'm like, I can handle this old guy. I'll go and talk to him and I'll go and find out what's going on. Make it so the next person who comes along to examine him doesn't just write him off as a fucking retard, because there's more than that going on here. You haven't had the time to talk to this guy. But Ellis, what a fucking day he had. What a nice kid. About 24, 25, nurse. Now, to be what he is at his age, he's worked hard and he deserves everything that he gets. And he's not even the best one I've spent time with. Lady who was my nurse while I was there for the first 3 days, Megan, who lives like 2 miles that way. 25-year-old. I'd have thought, wisdom and experience-wise, as a Rochdale bird, you can never assume a Rochdale bird isn't an experienced and wise person by way of the things they may have done and seen in their lifetime being from this place. Stunned to hear that she was 25 years old at her level of competency. Brilliant. Like, you only ever wanted to be a nurse, didn't you? And you had an idea that it wasn't as easy as some people might think it is. Brilliant. She's brilliant. It's like, when I was there, in hospital, I made one friend I really liked, and that was Megan. She's real, and it's really great. And it's a matter of, oh, you don't fancy her, do you? It's like weird in hospital, you can't fancy anyone. They do something to the water and to the food where everything's dead. It's weird. Everything in that regard's dead, so you can't really fancy anyone, I don't think, in hospital. Because she's half my age. But I'm like, you're really admirable in your level of ability to do this job and the shit you're willing to put up with and still be effective. And the amount of effort you put into doing the job right and making sure was second to none. If it's an overdone thing for people to say, to write to the NHS bosses and say, this person's a bit of a hero. It's worthless because so many others do it. It's like, it's a big part of the sympathy and wank pity party for those poor heroes of the NHS, which is a terribly cynical thing to have done, for the media and the government to have done in view of the conditions that they have to work in sometimes. And I've seen them real close up for a week. They've had to put up with me, but I don't make trouble for no one, so it's okay. But it's like, she's awesome as a nurse. It's like you could put her in any setting in the world, she'd be able to save people's fucking lives. She'd be able to make every second count in that kind of clinical situation and consistently make good decisions, good calls, hold it together, be professional, know what she was doing. Brilliant. It's like, yeah, you've got some real skill. And then strangely, one of the negative women I've been speaking to down in the cardio department, I said to her, I've been I've Megan as my nurse all week. And Danny, the other nurse, says, yeah, Megan is brilliant. She says, I trained her. I trained her up. She was my student nurse. I'm like, ain't that a thing? Did you, by any chance, instill your values into this person? Oh, yes. And it's like, how far up the old ranking scheme of nursing are you? And it's like, oh, she's probably as highly rated. They all have different coloured uniforms, like it's Star Trek The Next Generation. So it's like, oh, you're like a senior nurse. You're like not a doctor, but you're real high up there. Doctors, telling you, doctors. Specialised guys I've spoken to, fantastic. Spoke to a couple of, spoke to two, what would be emergency room doctors, very good indeed. Specialists, great. these guys who waft in and out of the wards, instructing nurses to do procedures. That to me spells absolute disaster when that group are as basically as strong as the weakest link, and every single one of them get to have a go at every single patient. It's like there's been 6 or 7 medical opinions given on my case today. That's a scattergun approach to storytelling. Have I got a brain tumour? Dr. Khan, who did my... Yeah? He explained, he had a student doctor, he had a student with him that he was explaining. He was using my case as a case to train this guy. And that's where it got, oh, I love stories. Yes, so do I. So I'm listening to my story being told. And Dr. Khan looks at every other doctor's angle of it, because that was what it was. It was every single expert on every single piece of equipment that had been used to test me gave their opinion on what they found. And the last guy, the surgeon, he's like, oh, that's my colleague so and so. So he says, and it's like, well, he knows him as his mate. He knows how he thinks, he knows how he sees things. He goes through that. And then this other fella, and then when I goes for the operation, it's like, it's weird. It's like you're under this like sort of radar scope thing that can see through you. That's all I can call it. And in the background here, there's this great big nest of rather advanced, expensive video monitors. So I can see inside my heart the same way as the doctor can see it. And he's giving out these instructions to this operator as to move this camera. Ding, 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 ding. Up 500, down 500. All precisely done, all. And then he's used whatever kit he's got to spray things into my heart. So it, so it excites it, so it can see it move. So I'm actually watching the inside of my heart, and I'm like, oh, so that's what my insides look like. I see the camera go down my veins and things. It's like, I don't see any of this shit that you're supposed to see. Watching it. But it's like that guy, he summarised everyone else's findings, and I here's it all. So in the end, every doctor who's had a butcher's at me from one side or another, they're all in the office, the operator room, while they're doing my heart. So it's a training thing for them. There's 3 trainee doctors there. There were two of these Indian doctors, these really well-to-do, well-spoken, rich Indian boys in like the mid-20s. And the girl Indian doctor was talking about another third fellow who wasn't there. And then this other Indian fellow says, oh yes, I know him. He's in my caste. So you're dealing with Indians with money. I've known Indians with money. They do have caste mates and tribe mates, and they openly talk about it like we're all in the same club, because they are. So all these guys are in there, and they've all given their own little bit of input, and it appears I've been used as a training dummy by a few of these guys, and then they do my cardiogram and they find that there's nothing wrong with my heart apart from one of my arteries is a bit thinner than the other 2, but they're working fine. It's like I've been discovered, haven't I? The dead man who should not exist lives. If anyone's got to this length or to this distance, I'm going to give it a rest now, because I'm getting tired and I could do with a good night's sleep, having spent a week in a hospital. But if anyone's got this far, I'd like to talk to a YouTuber out there called The Angry Foreigner. If I don't know this guy and people just, I send emails to people or ask them to say, I'd like a word with you. You said something interesting and maybe I can help you. Maybe we should have a conversation about your psychological state, sir. The Angry Foreigner, the Bosnian fellow who operates out of Sweden, put out a profound video a couple of weeks ago about his treatment in the Swedish version of the National Health Service, which has taken whatever he had wrong with him and turned it into a full-blown fucking mental illness, in essence. Took what was already damaged and appears to have made it a hell of a lot worse. And I got some skill with those kind of problems, and I've also got some friends who've got some skill in those kind of problems as well. Would you like to make friends? Maybe Angry Foreigner, and this is a tangent, isn't it? But that video he made about his time, it's called how he nearly killed his therapist, something like that. Go and check it out on his channel. It's an unexpected and quite shocking video delivered by someone who is, in essence, trying to ham it up that he's got no boundaries and is a bit of a psychopath and has murderous thoughts. And I think he's quite entitled to have murderous thoughts in view of the way that he gets treated. I don't think he's sadistic, dangerous, homicidal. Even I don't think he's as obsessive as he seems to think he is. I'd like to have a chat with him about his mental health and the measures he's taken to try to improve himself as being things that maybe haven't done him any good. And I say I got some friends who might be able to help him too. But that's the thing as to where that's on the side of it. That's something to point to. He's been just used as a source of work by a different department of the NHS as far as I'm concerned. And to me that is the dirtiest, most ridiculous hipster fucking money spinner that they've come up with yet. And that be the provision of psychology and psychiatric care. It's rubbish at it, all of them. The guys who are really good at psychology and psychiatric care, to my mind, all actually operate on the internet or in the private sector, who are, would never put it into the world that they've got so much skill because they couldn't handle the amount of work and demand they get. I reckon there's a small group of people who do the job well, maybe 1,000 in the fucking world. And strangely, the governments of the Western world in their healthcare systems, they employ hundreds of thousands of these people, and most of them are useless. It's like there is no one they had in that building who could outstrip me on psychology. No one. But I've been in the hospital and no. I could assess the mental health status of those people and be like, there's alarming things going on here that let's say there's a lot of unnecessarily wounded people in that organisation, who grin and bear it very much and will likely at the end of the day pay big psychological prices as to where it will eventually be described as that they burned out, and it'd be a matter of, no, these people are wounded, quite a few of them wounded, and that's not conducive to productivity, morale, professionalism. It makes it so you've always got a potential for weak links in a system that's now run to be as strong as its weakest link. I hope the tales I've told you today have demonstrated, just in a small way, how potentially devastating it is when one part of the chain isn't competent, when the rest of it is. But then at the same time, wow, right? Is it their fault is it the NHS's fault, right, that people wait 14 hours to be seen, and it be basically their operation's too small, and they've never been able to say stop, we need to reorganize this. Not that I'm saying reform and new rules would fix it. It's like, no, you need bigger hospitals with more beds and more staff. And this is a thing I've noticed as well. You know, the old doctor's notes system where they used to have the clipboard on the edge of the bed was never perfect. But now it's been just replaced with the digital version of exactly the same thing, where 6 doctors have all diagnosed me in their own way with one thing or another, and all been completely wrong. 6 of them had a stab at it from 6 different directions, and all be wrong. But in the end, sort of science bears it out and says, something strange has happened here. And it's like, yes, isn't it funny? So do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take the pills. What? Yeah, I'm going to take the pills. Might sound like a counterintuitive thing, but no, I'm going to take my meds and see if my blood pressure can be actually maintained and controlled, right? And I'm going to fix my heart and let it just fix itself on its own by managing my blood pressure, and see if what they say will happen. Unless I get psychological side effects, which were chemical supply, because I can detect things like that in my brain if things are not functioning properly. I'm pretty good at that. I've had a history of it, having been poisoned with fucking spurious drugs in the past from the NHS. So as soon as I get any side effects like that, I'm going to be straight on to my doctors. I'm going to be straight on to my specialist saying, we need to rethink the methods you'd have me take to control my blood pressure, because I'm having psychological side effects to your heart drugs. Although they seem rather confident that the modern version of the old drug won't have that effect. So it's like, has science caught up with my 1999-2000 spurious going to the doctors complaining of a rash and walking out of there with a diagnosis of hypertension? Do you think that might be solved by now? And do you think maybe I went back the 3rd time it happened. I raised the alarm first time the attack happened. Second time I swallowed it on the chin, tried to learn from it, and then applied everything I learned or thought I knew to fixing it myself, and then had a 3rd attack and proved to myself I didn't know jack shit. Called an ambulance, and then they've gone through the motions thinking they know what it is based on what they know it always is when they can detect this, and they be wrong fucking too. So I have to just sit with it that those doctors were real surprised by what they found when they actually used the cameras and looked inside. They were really, really surprised what they found. They were expecting to find a bloodbath. Like, this guy's fucked. And it'd be, turns out he isn't. How? We don't know. But have a look at the video. So yeah, upshot is, had a bit of an adventure. May have been inadvertently cured with water tablets, removing something harmful from my lungs that I was having an autoimmune reaction to, which was my diagnosis. Get in there, and one of the doctors put me on water tablets to basically to instruct my body to start to reabsorb any sort of water. That's what they do. And the time outside of what was the toxic environment of my own flat, me in hospital, and in that time my flat having been dried out with my dehumidifier and then now being on location here for I'm here for a good few weeks in a once again cleaner air environment, apart from obviously dogs. Cleaner air environment. It's like, I'm going to behave myself, I'm going to go on the meds, and let's see what happens to me in the next few weeks. Let's see if my stamina comes back. I've been a sick man for a good long time. I just don't complain about it. And I don't go to the doctors complaining about it, because, hey, all they're going to do is see the sweat on my brow, take my blood pressure, and decide I'm dying of fucking heart failure. Like they always do. But, alas, cannot do any more.